You may think they scare me, you're probably right. Black cats and goblins on Halloween night.
Halloween 2 by Jack Martin. Chapter 7. Where is Janet? I sent her to check with Mr. Garrett half an hour ago, and now I can't get a hold of either one of them unless I go down there myself. The phones are still on the fritz. Do you want me to find out for you, Mrs. Alves? Offered Karen without enthusiasm. Mrs. Alves tapped her pencil on the metal cover of a chart and pinched the bridge of her nose. I can't really spare you, Karen. What if there's another emergency admission? This is a small hospital. I wouldn't be able to leave the children unattended. Whatever you say, Mrs. Alves. The head nurse tested the phone again. She punched buttons with her pencil, gave up, exasperated. There's no way I can get either one of them. I can't even page them. Well, I definitely cannot have any more of this after tonight. This is most certainly not the way to run a hospital. Remember that, Karen. Yes, ma'am. It must be my eyes, but does it seem to be getting darker in here to you? I hadn't noticed, ma'am. It's my age. That's another thing for you to remember, Karen. Don't get old. It doesn't make for efficiency. Ma'am, excuse me, but is this a party? Loud voices and footsteps reverberated off the walls at the end of a spotless corridor. It certainly sounds like one, doesn't it? Mrs. Alves set down the chart and straightened her hat. We'll just have to see about that. She marched off. Bud, you fool, whispered Karen. If that's you... Karen was alone. On the other side of the glassed-in room, babies struggled in fitful sleep. Karen's own face hung reflected in the glass, lighted by the orange pumpkin on the desk. It was beginning to smolder and stink a bit as hot wax melted further and further down inside. Karen wrinkled her nose. She reached for the pumpkin to throw it out, or at least to move it. As her hand sank into the warm, softened side, she glanced up. How's Laurie doing? Said Jimmy. Oh, Jimmy, you scared the shit out of me. Don't do things like that. It's hard enough working the graveyard shift. What am I supposed to do, knock? Keep your voice down. You'll wake the children. Well? About Laurie Strode? They finally got her to sleep. You'll have to talk to Mrs. Alves. Jimmy's eyes narrowed intensely. Oh, great. They weren't supposed to do that. Karen laughed. And why not? She's in shock, Jimmy. Do you know what that means? Yes, I know what that means, Karen. Sleep's the best thing for her. Where's Mrs. Alves now? Is she in with Laurie? No, there was some kind of commotion. She went to check... I know, a TV crew just drove up. Oh, man, they must want to talk to Laurie. They'll have to go through Mrs. Alves first. Yeah, Jimmy bit his thumbnail. I'm gonna go check it out. I'll see you later, Karen. Bye. She leaned against the wall and kicked off one of her shoes. Oh, and if you see Bud, tell him I... But it was too late. Jimmy was already at the end of the hall. Karen breathed wearily and yawned. Nice guy, she said to herself. Too nice. Laurie Strode, look out. She toed back into her shoe and made an effort to appear busy. As Jimmy rounded the corner, was that a shadow in the fire doorway that led down to the basement? Karen leaned around the smelly pumpkin trying to see. Oh, when do we get to throw these damn things out? They give me the creeps. She sat. The corridor was clean and empty. The doors were closed. The neon lights hummed reassuringly, erasing any shadows she might have thought she had seen. She lifted her hair and massaged the back of her own neck awkwardly. Bud, she said. Oh, Bud, where are you when I need you? Elsewhere, a full-fledged argument was in progress. Jimmy saddled up next to Janet and Jill. Janet was overwrought, as always, perhaps a bit more so than usual right now. She was waiting to get Mrs. Alves' attention, but the head nurse was facing down the camera crew, as immovable as a master sergeant. No cameras allowed inside the hospital, she was saying. Those are the rules, so you just pack up your gear and move on out of here. A young man in the jacket liner folded his arms. Deborah told us to meet her here. Didn't she work everything out? She's the producer of Eyeline News. It doesn't matter who she is. Rules are rules. We wanted to get a reaction from the Strode girl about Michael Myers' death, said a man in a color-coordinated suit. It was Robert Mundy, the local news personality. He modulated into his most charming voice, to which Mrs. Alves was impervious. Sorry, but you'll have to leave right now. Don't make me call security." The cameraman gave up and started breaking down their equipment. Janet buttonholed Mrs. Alves. "Mr. Garrett said to tell you to call the police." "What?" "Yes, ma'am. Somebody broke into—" "Are the phones fixed?" "I don't know, Mrs. Alves. I'm trying to tell you. He's still outside working on them, the last I heard. But he said to tell you—" Jimmy elbowed through to Mundy, the announcer. "Michael Myers is dead? They're sure now it was him?" repeated Jimmy. The announcer showed his sandbag teeth automatically, as if he were on camera. "About 20 minutes ago. A policeman nailed him, literally." Mrs. Alves' voice rose. "All right, let's go. Come on." She ushered them all back down the hallway. "Are you sure he's dead?" asked Jimmy. "Oh, yeah," said Mundy. "They don't come any deader. He burned up alive. Car wreck. Say, do you think Deborah might be outside trying to get in?" "Deborah who?" "I thought everybody knew Deborah." Mundy laid a manicured hand on Jimmy's shoulder. "Are you in the industry?" Lori lay in semi-darkness in her safe white hospital bed, listening to her heartbeat. From time to time footsteps passed in the hall. Each time she prayed for them to pass by, and her heart speeded up. Then, when she heard that they were the regular business-like footsteps of the night staff, she turned hopefully to the small wire-glass window in her door and waited for someone to stop. But each time they passed by, that too made her heart speed up. She did not know which was worse, the trapped loneliness from which she could not free herself, or the fear that someone or something she could not name might find her here and enter her room. "I know what I'll do," she thought. "I'll lock the door and let in only that nice woman, Mrs. Alves, or one of the other nurses, or Jimmy." But the door had no lock. She tossed on the pillow in despair. "I can't go to sleep, because if I do, the dream will come again." It was an arid, suffocating dream, filled with a hideous light so bright it caused time to stop and left her hanging suspended, unable to make contact with anyone or anything. And then the shadows would begin to creep in, dissolving the light and threatening to devour her, like the shape that could shuffle to a stop outside her room at any moment. And if she were to fall asleep, she would not even have a chance to run to the window, if she could manage to get that far. Cold tears of fear squeezed out of her eyes. She rolled her head. Now. Someone was coming now. She could feel it, through the floor and up through the tight sheets. The IV tube that fed into her arm began to sway in the moonlight. She held her breath, trying to quiet her heart. A voice came to her through the glass. Close. Already here. "Jimmy, don't! You're going to get in trouble!" It was the blonde nurse. Jill, her name badge had said. Yes, Jill was nice. She helped that doctor and Mrs. Alves when I was first brought here. How long ago was it? "It's okay. Mrs. Alves is busy, trust me." That was Jimmy's voice. Good Jimmy. She raised her head. He was standing in the doorway. Even in the backlight his eyes were clear and shining, warm. She wet her lips to speak. "It's okay," said Jimmy. "Everything's okay." He always made it sound so simple. "What time is it?" she said. He ignored her question as if it didn't matter. It must not matter, she thought. Why am I worrying about a thing like that? "The police got Michael Myers," he told her. "He's dead, Lori. You don't have anything more to worry about." He sounded as if he really believed it. "He's not dead," she told him. "He is, Lori. I just talked to a reporter. He was in some kind of accident." "He didn't die." She tried, but could not raise her voice above a whisper. "He's still out there. You've got to believe me." "It's over, Lori. It's all over." When she kicked the sheet off and worked her leg over the edge of the bed, he was there to hold her back. "No, he's still out there. I know he is. I know it. You don't know. You think you know, but you don't. You've got to help me. I've got to get out of here." She fought him. Why would he stop her? Doesn't he understand? No, he doesn't. He couldn't. He didn't see. Jimmy restrained her gently. She could feel that he did not want to hurt her, but the more she pushed, the stronger his arms became. It was as if there was no limit to his strength. As much as he needed to keep her here would be his. She was unable to now summon the strength needed to free herself from danger, as she had ever been. It's not the wound, she realized. It's me. I'm weak. I need people to protect me. I always have. God damn them! Well, there are no people to protect me, not now and not ever. I've got to do it myself. I've got to... Lori, cut it out! He'll find me here! Yes, it's true! You've got to help me! Please help me! Jimmy called over his shoulder. Jill! Running feet, rubber soles against the linoleum. 2 nurses' caps in the doorway. Jill and the other one, the dark one. Perhaps one of them would listen. There was no more time. It had to be now before the night got any darker. I've got to get out. I've got to... Go get Dr. Mixter, commanded Jimmy. Quick! Stay with her, said Jill. I'll get Mrs. Alves. Lori collapsed against Jimmy with sobs that tore painfully inside of her. Take it easy. Everything's going to be okay. Even though it hurt so, she could not stop herself from sobbing, not even when the others came running in. The lights went on. Dr. Mixter's voice. Jill, get me 5 milligrams of diazepam. A cold wetness on her arm. The acrid smell of alcohol sliced her nostrils. No, don't put me to sleep. He'll find me. She opened her eyes wide. A long silver needle streaked toward her arm. Her wrist was held down, and everything stopped as soundlessly every light in the rooms, the hallway, and the building was snuffed out. Oh no, said a voice. She sat there in darkness, her body twisted, the pressure on her arms and legs, the tearing pain in her shoulder. Their eyes were bluish-white in the moonlight that washed in on them all. No one moved. Lori remained tensed against the piercing of the needle, which did not come. Everyone stay as you were, said Dr. Mixter. The emergency generator will kick in. It has to. Chapter 8. This is difficult. And it was. Loomis watched the dentist Graham stooping over a charred body, probing like a scrimshaw artist at a row of still-hot teeth. Next to him, Deputy Hunt wadded a handkerchief to his nose to keep from being sick. The dentist scraped blackened deposits from molars and wiped his probe on the sheet. Even the gums are charred. Look here. He wielded a flat-bladed tool and cut away clotted blood and tissue. See here? The man abraded the tooth all the way down to its roots in the socket. The blade squeaked grittily. No fillings. Loomis's nostrils flared. Even the air conditioner and the blowing scent of green soap and formaldehyde could not mask the stench of boiled entrails and rank organs. He's young, said the dentist. He excised a crisp strand of jaw muscle and laid it in the pan like a burnt anchovy. Maybe 17, maybe 18? Loomis said. Michael Myers was 21. Positive ID means we check x-rays and dental records. Graham looked up. His scalpel slipped and skittered up to the skull to where the nose had been. The blade caught in the sharp edges of the burned-out cavity. A last remaining squib of gristle broke off from the skull and rolled into one of the drainage holes in the autopsy table. That will take hours, said Loomis. No other way to know for sure, I'm sorry. Graham smiled helplessly at Loomis, showing his teeth, and adjusted his eyeglasses with a sooty rubber glove. We haven't got hours, Loomis paced, seeing the scales for weighing, the jars of preserved kidneys and intestines, the plastic bags full of tagged appendages. On top of a purring refrigerator, a floating brain segment shivered like molded gelatin. Listen to me. His voice rose with fatigue. We've got to assume that Michael Myers is still alive. There was a clacking in the hall. The doors swung wide, and another patrolman approached the deputy Hunt. Hunt diverted him from the table. Everybody goes back out. But we just closed it up, said the patrolman. I want to sweep from Chestnut South to the bypass. Every street, every house, every backyard. The patrolman held out his hands to object, but thought better of it. Hunt's eyes were red but unblinking above the handkerchief. Okay, you got it. The patrolman laughed. Hunt's eyes met Loomis and bored into him. Thank you, Loomis said. At Hunt's back, a life-sized anatomy chart covered part of one wall. Loomis saw the graphic veins and arteries that flow in infinite complexity throughout a human being, each delicate connection originating from something called the heart. As small and nondescript as that organ was, it dominated the entire picture and seemed to give the pattern meaning. Hunt lowered the handkerchief, his eyes never leaving Loomis. "I knew Annie Brackett," he said with difficulty. "The other kids, too. And now, there may be another boy lying on this slab here who died because of you, so don't thank me, Doctor. Just help me find him." "All right," said Loomis, but the deputy had already left the room. Graham was preoccupied with sorting his tools. As he packed them away, he hummed a tune, oblivious to the grisly, grinning witness next to him on the table. There gaped a rib-cage opened by tongues of fire. Here a hand whose fingers were melted to stumps, and there a leg bone contorted like a blackened pipe cleaner, ending in a foot that was a lump of coal. The skull, with its jawbone open wide to the examination light in a last searing scream, unable to close ever again. The dentist eyed Loomis curiously. "You can go now," said Loomis. "What about my fee? Shall I send the bill to the HPD or to—" "I don't care what you do," said Loomis with unconcealed contempt. Then he was out the swinging doors of the coroner's office, after Hunt. Back at the hospital, Karen was sorting tomorrow's medication, dropping colored pills into a tray full of little paper cups, when every light in the hospital went out. "Oh!" She let a yelp out of her throat and froze. Her hand shook, tapping the paper cups. She waited as her eyes opened to the sunspot of orange light bouncing on the ceiling. It came from the top of the pumpkin. Then there was a rumbling in the walls as the emergency generator cut in. The sealed bulbs buzzed overhead, restarting, and an interrupted line of light advanced toward her along the corridor. Dark areas remained by some of the doors. The emergency generator was equipped to handle only half power, so that every second light remained off to conserve energy where it was needed most. The floor now appeared to be inlaid in an unfamiliar checkerboard pattern of black and white. She turned as best she could to her sorting. The pills she held had begun to dissolve in the sweat of her palms. She dropped them into the wastebasket and started over. Janet came running, a white shape at the end of the hall. She panted as she came up. "Have you seen Mr. Garrett?" "No, I haven't. Why don't you call him?" "The phones are still out of order. He's supposed to be fixing them. I don't know what's taking him so long. Oh, what a night, huh?" "What happened to the lights?" "I don't know, but you want to hear something really creepy?" Janet was vaguely disheveled. A strand of hair was pasted to her forehead. "What?" Karen set the tray aside. "Somebody broke into the storeroom. Mr. Garrett said some stuff was gone." "He probably took it himself." "I don't think it's funny," Janet persisted. "It's just really creepy." "Why? What was missing?" "Hypodermic needles." Karen laughed nervously. "Oh, that must have been Bud." "That's not very funny either, Karen." "Hey, take it easy, Jan." "Yeah, well, Mrs. Alves sent me to talk to Mr. Garrett, and I still can't find him. Has he come by here recently?" "No, this place is deader than Iowa State Picnic." Janet was racing. "Yeah, and I can't find Mrs. Alves now either. It's creepy, I tell you." "Take a Valium, Janet. You're getting all pushed out of shape over nothing." "Easy for you to say. You didn't hear Laurie Strode screaming about how Michael Myers is still out there, how he's coming to get her." "I thought he was dead," said Karen. "He is. She's just flipped out." She was making an effort to calm herself, but the words tumbled out. "I'm telling you, it's pretty creepy." She bit down. "Anyway, I gotta go, Karen." "See you later," said Karen. Karen watched her disappear into the next corridor. Then she blew a hair away from her nose, pulled her neckline out, and blew down, ventilating her uniform. She resumed her pill sorting at half speed. Her hands were shaking. "One yellow," she reminded herself. "One red and gray." An emergency call buzzer went off. She dropped the pills, bumping the counter and breaking one of her nails. "I'm coming," she said. "I'm coming already. Don't have kittens." She collected the pills and deposited them in one jar, put the lid on the jar, rearranged the tray, grabbed the rubber noose of her stethoscope, and went up the corridor away from pediatrics. With so many of the hall lights out, the signal near the ceiling flashed with an unusually bright urgency. She checked the door, but there was no name on it. She bit at her broken nail. The glass observation panel on the door was absolutely dark. "Mrs. Alves," she said to herself, "where are you?" She grabbed the knob. The door budged an inch, then stopped. It was not locked, but something was blocking it from the other side. She set her heel against the floor and pushed harder. The door gave and opened wide. There was a breathing in the room, the white shape of a patient lying on the bed, the sheet rising, falling. She tiptoed all the way in, groped to adjust the edge of the bedding. At that moment the shape under the sheet grabbed her. Her scream was cut off by a hand. Another hand, a very strong hand, flipped her onto her back and held her down. Her eyes widened. The hand was over her mouth. She could not breathe. She opened her teeth and bit as hard as she could, and the sheet fell away. "Shit!" She stared in horror at Bud. You idiot!" she sputtered. Bud sucked his finger. "You could have broken it." "I wish I had." "Had your rabies shots lately? Jesus, baby, that hurts." Karen showed him what she had in her uniform pocket. "I also could have used these on you." A small pair of hook-nosed scissors. "What an asshole." "Happy Halloween," said Bud mirthlessly. Karen climbed off the bed. "You're the biggest jerk I've ever known, Bud." He grinned sheepishly. "But you love me." "I'm an idiot." "Let's go down to the therapy room. Bud's finger needs some, therapy." Karen caught her breath. She softened against her will. "I can't leave the kids now." "Karen." "We have to wait until Marlowe comes on." "That's another 3 hours. Bud can't wait." "Bud will have to." She was standing with her knees touching the bed. Bud crawled closer. "Everybody's all weirded out tonight," he said. "All this Michael Myers crap. I just want to get away for a little while." "What happened with the lights?" "They go out about twice a week, 'member?" he said in his most reasonable voice. He touched her wrist. "Come on, the therapy room's only 3 doors down." "Bud," she said, her voice rising and falling on mixed emotions. "Think about it." He stroked the inside of her arm, up under the sleeve. "I can't." "Everybody else is in the East Wing, right?" he argued. "All weirded out, right?" Karen looked at him in the dimness from the hall. She pursed her lips. "If we left the door open, we could hear someone coming. Or if one of the kids started to cry." She sounded like she was convincing herself. "Exactly." "I have to check things out first." 15 minutes? The floor was silent, except for the restless dreaming of babies in their cribs. "If everything's okay." "So go," said Bud. "You're wasting time, babe." As she left, he fell back on the bed, sucking his finger. A strange scene was currently in progress at the old Myers house. As Hunt's car arrived at the curb, the crowd had already become a mob. A black uniformed policeman, catwalking the second-story roof with gun at the ready, was covering his head, dodging rocks. Hunt and Loomis got out. A beer bottle sailed out of the crowd and shattered a window next to the policeman. He crouched and shouted at them. They shouted back louder. Hunt trained his searchlight at the roof to encircle the officer. That only made him a better target. Obscenities rang out from both sides. In the beam of the searchlight, fists were raised. Angry faces snarled at the new arrivals. Like something I saw in a movie once, thought Loomis, appalled. I thought scenes like this went out with the 19th century villages. Any second now they'll be lighting torches and calling for blood. Hunt uncoiled his radio microphone. "This is Hunt," he said, yelling to be heard. They were all out now, teenagers, neighbors, the whole block by the look of it. "Send another vehicle. 45 Lambkin Lane." "The tribe," said Loomis. "One of their number was butchered. This is the wake." He rechecked the chamber of his .357 as Hunt unlocked his riot gun from the dashboard. "Heightens my sense of security," said Loomis. All right, knock it off," shouted Hunt. He held his shotgun like a baton and forced a way through the crowd. Loomis felt that he was running a gauntlet. There were more officers inside the house than he would have guessed there were in the whole of Haddonfield. They were sifting through every square inch of the place. Better late than never. The patrolman from the coroner's office came up. His badge glinted in the crisscrossing flashlights. "Empty," he announced to Hunt. "Plus, we covered the whole east end of town. Nothing out there, Gary." "Check it again." "He just ain't here." "I said check it again." The patrolman took 2 men, and the 3 of them fought their way back out to the street. Hunt turned on Loomis. "Haddonfield was a pretty quiet town," he said, "until tonight. The only gunshots you ever heard were to start the track meet at the high school." He shook out a Marlboro, lit it with a yellow cricket lighter. As an afterthought, he offered Loomis one. They walked around to one side, away from the natives. "And yet," said Loomis distantly, lighting up his cigarette, "one night in 1963, Michael Myers did murder his sister in that very upstairs bedroom." With a large butcher knife, he thought. "I remember," said Hunt. "It was on Halloween." "I was 16 years old, I remember." Loomis was aware of new feelings insinuating itself into his consciousness, a sense of continuity that linked his life with the life of Hunt and the others in this town. Though he had not known them or the town directly until now, it was true that they had an unholy alliance. Himself and this square-cut young man and his partners. It was almost a complicity. By this alone were they now united here, remembering, marking similar milestones in their lives, however different those lives might have been. 15 years ago, thought Loomis, what might I be now if not for Michael Myers? I stayed with him naively, trying to help. And Hunt, he took a different course after that night. He responded in a way I should have all along. He armed himself with firepower. It's his anniversary, Mr. Hunt. As it is for all of us, he thought, the date of our blood bondage. He came back. After 15 years? He waited with extraordinary patience. Loomis was quite surprised to find himself explaining how it had been for him, miles from Haddonfield, but always fated to be here one day, this day, along with the other parallel lives, aimed from the beginning toward a convergence none of them could have known anything about, myself included, myself most of all. Only the evil knew. He always knew. There was a force inside him, biding its time. He went on, smoking his cigarette against the stars. The staff grew accustomed to his immobility and silence. In many ways he was the ideal patient. He didn't talk, he didn't cry, he didn't even move. He just waited. The staff was unprepared. They, he finished recounting, didn't know what he was. The twin arcs of their cigarettes moved like shooting stars over the Illinois porch. "Did you know?" asked Hunt. There was no accusation in his voice. It was too late for that. And this policeman was nothing if not pragmatic. "Yeah," said Loomis bitterly. "I knew. I always knew. It was my belief, not my knowledge, that failed," he thought. "My faith, that primitive impulse for survival that our modern world has taken from us, leaving us what we are now, alone and lost, trying to set it right and make it back through the darkest part of the night to morning." 2 teenage boys then ran up while Loomis was lost in his thoughts. "Mr. Hunt?" "Yeah, what is it, Craig?" "I'm worried about Bennett Traynor." "He's not home yet," said the second boy. "Yeah, he left the party at 10. Hunt consulted his watch. "It's only a little after 11, boys." "He was real drunk," said the second boy. Loomis had a sense of foreboding. "How old was he?" 17, said the first boy. "He had this stupid mask on," said the second boy. Hunt and Loomis avoided each other's eyes. "We're just scared something's happened to him." "All right, boys," said Hunt. "Mr. Hunt," said the first boy, I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell my dad I was at a party tonight." Hunt nodded. "Going home now. We'll take care of it." Loomis watched them lope away. 17, he said, "and wearing a mask." "Oh, God," said Hunt. "We'd better check his dental records." A patrolman came around the side of the house. "Old Reservoir Road," called the patrolman. "They got a break-in at the elementary school. They're pretty sure it's him." Loomis pitched his cigarette away. It hit the street in a shower of sparks. "Come on!" Okay, Slashaholics, this has been chapters 7 and 8 of Halloween 2 by Jack Martin. Hope you're enjoying the book so far. Even without any Michael Myers or kills in tonight's upload, I thought the characters' interaction was great. I thought setting the tone for what's to come was fantastically written. And that entire scene there with Hunt and Loomis really set the stage for what's coming next in the book. Excuse me. And I continue to look forward to every new upload of this book. I cannot wait to finish it. Really enjoying this one. Maybe I'm a little bit impartial, since Halloween 2 was my favorite movie of the original run of Halloween movies. But guys, let me know what you thought of tonight's upload and the book so far in the comments section. Love to hear from you guys, and I'll be back very soon with the next chapter or so of this great book. As always, tonight's upload was brought to you by our patrons on the Patreon page. That's Carl Eakins, Catherine McClear, Sean Campbell, Cecilia Spears, Hawaii, Iron Alexa, and Allison Sibe. Thank you all for supporting the channel on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated. And if anybody listening right now enjoys this channel and wants to see it keep pumping out-of-print slasher novels in audiobook form and other great movie novelizations and tie-in novels, then click the Patreon link below and sign up for as low as $2 to $5 per month. You'll get some great rewards for doing so, some great incentives. Check it out, and you'll be helping the channel grow. Alright guys, until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, have a great night, and I'll see you soon.